It's Sunday morning, and it is on a day where we're dealing with some low clouds over parts of the Northeast, but there probably will be some improvement. Severe weather risk from eastern areas of the Ohio Valley to the Carolinas. We've got a bit of a late winter storm going on in the northwestern Great Lakes, melting snows in the northern plains, and not too shabby across the south for a change. We'll have all of that and much more coming up on this Sunday morning Joe and Joe Weather Show, the 16th of April, 2023, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. In full spring mode, you landscapers need a ton of mulch or topsoil or sand. Omni is the place to go. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. And the website is omnitruevalue.com. And also our new affiliate here, Tempest, by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. Plus, you could find it in various places, like in the YouTube community tab. I put a post up there yesterday with a link to it. And if you use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show, you get 10% off on this or any other weather merchandise. And just to show you, I put mine up yesterday, and there it is. Now you might say, okay, Joe, well, why didn't you put it up on your roof so that you could get better wind observations? Because this thing gets wind observations, rainfall amounts, and so on, liquid precip amounts, and so on. Well, I'm surrounded. You can't see them all, but I'm actually surrounded by so many trees that it's from the standpoint of the wind. This was probably the best spot. Plus, I'm not really good at doing roofs. Let's put it that way. Especially as I'm now into my 60s. The last thing I want to do is get myself on a roof where I'm here all alone, and God forbid I should, I'm not, I tend to be a little bit on the clumsy side sometimes. So I would prefer not to have something happen to me while I was here all by my lonesome. So there you go. Just check out the link at the top of the chat board there. It'll be pinned out throughout the show today. Welcome to everybody on the chat board, and those of you who are lurking in the background on this Sunday, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We are minus one Joe. Joe Rayo is attending an astronomy gathering over at Rockland Community College, so he took the Sunday off, and he will be back tomorrow at 7:30 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on Monday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m., Sundays at 11 a.m., and usually we're off Fridays and Saturdays unless there is something going on. So be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and if you like the show today, hit the like button, and that'll make me happy. All right, so we are here on this Sunday. There's still things changing as far as the overall weather pattern is concerned. There's nothing today that really sort of stands out in terms of super nasty weather, but we have a few things going on that we should point out, and we're going to start doing that now by heading over to the U.S. satellite view. Just saw that Trish Sparaccio has hit the tip jar. Thank you, Trish Sparaccio, for hitting Super Chat today. It is most appreciated as always. And hope Anthony had a happy birthday. As we last left Anthony at his birthday, I think it was on Thursday. All right, so a few standouts on the satellite today, and that has to do with the fact that you'll notice that there's a giant rotation going on in the upper Midwest, and that thing is just sort of spinning away, and then there's an arm that goes, the bottom part of that comma extends down into the Gulf of Mexico. By the way, take a look at what's in the central Gulf of Mexico. Just a really impressive squall line of thunderstorms that started along in southeast Louisiana yesterday and has now moved southeastward into the Gulf. Pretty impressive. At a time of year, a different time of year, if we were in June or July, might be something to keep an eye on as far as tropical development would be concerned, but that is not a problem for us at this time of year. Meantime, in the Northeast, we had this upper low, and you could kind of see the remnants of it southeast of Cape Cod when it was in central Pennsylvania yesterday. I have to tell you, it really took me by surprise. Not so much that there were thunderstorms, but the fact that there were some really heavy thunderstorms that produced some big rains and localized flash flooding in parts of western New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania late yesterday afternoon and evening. I just happened to just pop the radar up on my screen about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I just went, whoa. I mean, there's some pretty hefty boomers there. Well, that upper low's now moved on to the east, and we're dealing with, if you look closely at the loop, you can see the higher clouds are moving out fairly quickly to the northeast, but there's a deck of lower clouds that may be on the stubborn side. So I sort of compromised today in terms of the forecast. The way I worded it was a day where it would be cloudy to partly sunny, depending on where your location is. So, for example, if you're north of Route 84 and throughout much of upstate New York and into Vermont and northern New Hampshire, it's bright and sunny and virtually cloud-free. If you're south of southern Pennsylvania down to Delaware into Virginia, at the moment, you've got sunshine, although there's a little disturbance there that's moving northeastward with some clouds. And we also have a little arc of thunderstorms that formed this morning off South Carolina. They looks like they've weakened a little bit, judging from the lightning strikes that are going on. Not seeing any lightning strikes showing up yet in this area that you see coming down into the western parts of the Ohio Valley. So this is the cold front that is moving east, and that's going to probably trigger off some showers and thunderstorms later this afternoon and evening in parts of the Ohio Valley, back down into the southeastern part of the United States, particularly in the Carolinas. I think that's where it'll extend. It's sort of on a northwest-southeast arc. And otherwise, you can see where all the nice weather's going on. Also, a pretty beautiful, really beautiful day in much of the plains. If you're far enough west away from the back edge of the clouds from this storm that's moving up toward Wisconsin, it's a bright and sunny day there. It's bright and sunny in much of the southwest. Got a little bit of precip action coming into the Pacific Northwest, but that's just about it. Robert Russo, thanks for hitting the tip jar today on this Sunday. And again, really do appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at what's going on the radar. There are some, let's go first in the east, and there's a little bit of leftover shower activity that this morning was sitting over southeastern New England. That has moved pretty much offshore. The rest of the area in the northeast, just about all of the northeast, pretty quiet here down into the mid-Atlantic states. And then you have that little area that was off the North Carolina coast that has weakened a bit as those showers and storms move to the northeast and stay primarily offshore. The radars in southeast Louisiana picking up that northern part of that disturbance that is now moved down pretty far south into the Gulf of Mexico, but the back edge of the echo is extending to, it doesn't even come anywhere close to the southeast Louisiana at this point. We've got some showers and couple of possible thunderstorms in southwest Georgia at the moment as that area slides to the east. And then we head up into the upper Midwest as we look at this rotation here. And of course, on the northwestern side, we've got some snow that's happening as this part of the country, winter tends to hang around for a little while before it finally makes its last appearance at some point in the next few weeks. But this low is moving pretty much northward. And that means that the cold front that's coming east is taking its time. So it's not a front that's going to approach today. So as far as rain is concerned in the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states, I really don't think you'll see anything today, and probably for a good part of tonight. It'll be early tomorrow morning, around daybreak or so, plus or minus a couple of hours, depending on whether you're west or east. You'll see what should be a narrow line of showers move on through, and that's just about it. And we've got some heavier rains coming into the west coast. You see those there into Washington and into Oregon. So here's our risk map today from the Storm Prediction Center, where we have a marginal risk for severe weather in Michigan to western New York, western and central Pennsylvania, back to Ohio, West Virginia. So basically from the central and eastern part of the Great Lakes, for the most part, down the west to the west side of the Appalachians, and then crossing the other side into Virginia, North and South Carolina. We have a marginal risk of severe weather also for central and southern Florida. Not much else going on as far as severe weather is concerned. Some general thunderstorms up in the northwest. For tomorrow, Monday, we are not seeing any severe weather, and actually a minimal amount of thunderstorm activity. West Texas, the immediate northwest coast, and southern Florida. As we move to day 3, this is for Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a narrow area of marginal risk in central Texas and west central Oklahoma pushing northward. Another area from northeast Kansas to southern South Dakota, southeastern Minnesota. And we do have on day 4, I believe, no, is it day 4 or day 5? Day 5 on SPC's long range. That's Thursday into Friday for day 5, where we have a 15% or what could be a slight risk possibility over Arkansas and southern Missouri. Otherwise, we have predictability to low on days 4, day 6, day 7, and day 8. And as far as precip is concerned in terms of amounts, now this is a 7-day map, so this goes to next Sunday. You're seeing what looks like 3/4 of an inch to 1 1/4 inches through much of the Northeast. However, bear in mind that some of that comes tonight and into tomorrow morning, probably the lesser part, and then maybe something late next week or going into Saturday next weekend, where we could see a stronger cold front and maybe a better chance of more widespread rain. Big rains and some snow, obviously, in the western Great Lakes, and some of that is from today's storm, obviously. But we're looking at 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches plus of total liquid precip for the whole week in that area. Central Gulf states, 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. Generally, 1/4 of an inch or so in the southeast into the mid-Atlantic from Virginia to Georgia. Picks up again along the east coast of Florida. 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches there. And in the northwest, where we're still seeing weather systems coming in and bringing big rains to the immediate coast, several to, in some cases, many inches of precipitation happening there. So let's look at the HRRR, and we can actually, well, you know what I'll do, because we don't use this too often and probably would be a bit useful. We can use the enhanced satellite here as far as what's happening. And you'll know we talked about that little disturbance that was in North Carolina, Virginia, that's not really producing very much, but that's lifting up northward and just kind of fighting higher pressures that are sitting east of Cape Cod. We've got a high center there, and that's producing a wind that's coming in off the ocean. That's helping to hold temperatures down. You see the rotation that is back over into the western lakes. Just sort of spins there. The low takes a long time to get out of the way. I mean, this is pretty much all day today and into tonight. And of course, the arm that we talked about in the Ohio Valley begins to swing eastward. You can see some of the enhanced cloud on the enhanced loop here. You see on the enhancement that's showing up in eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania. That could be some isolated severe thunderstorms. That swings on through. And again, it's tomorrow morning. It's a narrow area of precip that we're talking about here. So there might be a couple of showers, maybe a rumble or two of thunder when that goes by. But here we are tomorrow, and that upper low is still sitting there, just starting to slowly move eastward across Michigan and into southeastern Canada, western New York by the time we get to Tuesday morning. So that's going to feed in a change in an overall pattern, which, of course, we just came through a week where it's been very, very record heat for April. It was hot. You have temperatures in the 90s. That's hot. Thankfully, the dew points were dry. Well, we're going to have a different sort of a week this week from that respect, as this upper air system is going to be a fairly good driver of chillier air for let's say the first half of the week, and then probably warming up somewhat in the second half. And we'll just widen this out here so you can take a look at. Again, we should use this probably a bit more often on the show, so maybe I'll try to remember that. That's probably the greater challenge, is me remembering it. But you see the systems coming into the northwest is getting sort of deflected up into southwestern Canada rather than cutting right across, because the low to the east is creating a little bit of a traffic jam. So we have to wait for this to get out of the way. I'm going to just switch to see if there's there's even a GFS version of this, which is good. So this is in 6-hour increments. But you see the upper low as we get into Tuesday is still sitting in eastern Canada. But in the meantime, there's a lot of energy that's crashing into the western part of the United States and heading into the plains and into the upper Midwest by the time we get to the middle of the week. Fairly quiet in the east until late in the week, when we start to see it looks like a storm system running into the western lakes, much like this one. By the time we get to Friday, this is the new GFS, by the way, which is out to 115 hours. I'll back one model run. That's as far out as that goes with respect to, that is the 6Z. I'm sorry, this is the 6Z, and it only goes out to 115 hours. So that pretty much takes us only through the next 5 days. So I'll go back to the, let's go back to the HRRR, and we're going to go with the surface map here. So we'll bring that up. There you go. So here's how the HRRR sees it. We'll use the 12Z HRRR because that goes out 48 hours, and I'll just back it off just a little bit. This is pretty much right now, which when we look at the radar matches up fairly well. Your low is up in northeastern Wisconsin. That cold front starts to swing like a giant arm, moving eastward, and that triggers off what could be maybe some severe thunderstorms, isolated severe thunderstorms, with that marginal risk from Ohio down into North and South Carolina. The southern part of that is very, very narrow. It's almost like a little stick there that moves eastward. And here we are. This is at 2 a.m. And you see where the narrow band is in eastern PA. Here's 5 a.m. and here's 7 a.m., 8 a.m. So the southern end of this just kind of gets fractured and dries up. I'm just going to leave things as they are for a brief chance that there could be a shower or thunderstorm when that goes by. And then the winds go to the west. We've got a cooler flow with that low sitting over Lake Huron and moving northeastward very, very slowly. It'll be a bit on the breezy side, but notice it's pretty dry all the way back through the plains. And beyond Tuesday, as we take a look, you'll notice, I'm sorry, let me just, there you go, GFS. So we go a little bit further east, and there you have it. So here comes again, all this, you got all this energy comes into the west, what we have today. Then you've got another arm that comes in from another low on Monday, and that pushes a little more moisture to the northern plains. On early Wednesday, we've got a low in Nebraska that just sort of settles there in the central plains down into Kansas, and then eventually you take out a low that goes northeastward and develops. Yes, that's dark blue snow up in Minnesota, with a 98 low in northwestern Wisconsin, the trailing cold front down to the south. Now here in the east, I think what's going to happen is, so we'll definitely going to be cooler. I think the first part of the week will be, at least tomorrow, we'll probably have some leftover warm air, so we'll be in the 60s, maybe close to 70. I'm thinking 50s to near 60 for the most part on Tuesday, and then we're going to go bounce back up into the 60s on Wednesday. Now the problem is there's a little bit of a warm front. There's actually a weak front that comes through around the low that's in eastern Canada Tuesday night into Wednesday, and it sort of stalls out right near New York City, northern New Jersey, and then extends back into that low that's southwest Kansas. So eventually it becomes a warm front. You see it here Wednesday night and Thursday morning, which is why the model produces that little band of showers all of a sudden early Thursday morning from northeast PA and northwest New Jersey, north and west. That may or may not be real. It's hard to say whether that is the case, but the warm front's going to kind of hang there, maybe even push southward. So it may cease to be as a warm front and just become a cold front for a short time again, as you start to get some higher pressures building in southeastern Canada and New England. That'll more than likely force a bit of an onshore flow late in the week, but I don't think it's anything really impressive. It's probably more of a problem for eastern New England and maybe southeastern New England in terms of temperatures than areas to the west. But eventually, we are going to get a cold front that's going to approach. One tries to approach on Friday. It just sort of dies out, and it waits for another low to form later Friday night, and Saturday, and you see this here. Now, I'm wondering whether, this is still a little bit beyond SPC's forecast, but this looks like this might be a Friday night severe weather event for the Ohio Valley down into the lower Mississippi Valley. So we'll look at the upper air in a second to see if that may indeed be the case. And then the front pushes eastward next weekend, Saturday, where we have showers and storms, and perhaps this could be a severe weather event for Alabama and Georgia by the time we get to next Saturday. Then the front goes by, turns cooler and drier behind that, and that looks like it might stay cool and on the cool side for a few days as we head toward believe it or not, the last days of April. And then we have some other kind of low that comes out over into the Great Lakes. So pattern, I would describe the pattern overall as it's not necessarily quiet. On the other hand, it's not necessarily overly busy, and it's not, indicative of any kind of major storms. This time of year, it's hard to get, 9 lows under 990. You start to see them, at their deepest, maybe in the 990s. Perhaps if you get something that goes to the lakes, you can get it into the 980s. If you do wind up with something like that, then you start talking about whether there's going to be some severe weather issues somewhere. So I'm looking at this and thinking, there's a fairly strong upper low and shortwave that's going to be swinging southeastward late next week. So you got one trough here on Thursday. So I think that's probably supportive for the possibility of severe weather at the end of the week and going into Saturday in the middle part of the country. And then another stronger trough that comes in behind that later in the weekend might be more supportive for severe weather in the South Atlantic states, perhaps, and down into the eastern Gulf states. Again, I'm just sort of pontificating here for the longer haul. And troughing wants to come into the east in general, judging from this, after 4 months. But you do see more troughing in the east and actually some ridging finally in the western part of the United States. Boy, I mean, we've been, I've been commenting for the longest time how it's still unrelenting how these systems want to just keep going into the western part of the U.S. And of course, we saw what happened last week with the big warm up that we had. But one thing for sure is if this is the case, that we are going to see this little bit of a shift here in the overall pattern with more troughing in the east and less and some ridging in the west, that perhaps we won't have a repeat performance of the warm weather the hot weather that we saw last week in the northeast and mid-Atlantic middle Atlantic states for a while. I mean, eventually, obviously, it's going to come as we head through the rest of the spring and into the summer months. But this is actually, I'm just kind of looking at this, just want to see what it looks like on the North America view. I mean, you have some blocking in the North Atlantic. All of a sudden, you've got a deep trough, deep troughing in the eastern part of the U.S. Where was this in March? Where was this in February? Nowhere to be found. So, just going back to today, just a couple of things. So, this is a high temperature map up and down the East Coast, and you see the wind. They've got the wind barbs on it, which is useful. This is the wind barbs may not necessarily reflect the all-day wind, but the primary wind from Maine down into New Jersey is from the east or east-southeast. So this is why you're seeing temperatures in southeastern New England today not getting out of the 50s, eastern Long Island, southeastern Connecticut, Rhode Island not getting out of the 50s, and then you start to see 60s as you go west from there. New York City A 71 print is indicated. Now, how much sun is another matter. I mean, we might need a little bit of help of the sun coming out this afternoon in order for that to happen. But western New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, except maybe the Northeast, where we still have some upper 60s there. You could see a lot of 70s and even start to see some 80s in southern Pennsylvania, southwest Jersey, into Maryland, Virginia, eastern North and South Carolina. So, that's where your very warm area is. And the other thing we could punch up here, why don't we just take a look at what's being generated for snow amounts in and around the Great Lakes. I did not really take a look at this earlier, but if you notice on the watches and warnings map, we've got winter weather advisories, and much of the western half of Wisconsin is under winter storm warnings, as is northeastern Minnesota. We also have wind advisories from the southern half of Minnesota down into Missouri and northeastern Kansas. Miss Fallerite, you mentioned it's breezy there. Okay, that's why you're on the bottom end of that big rotation. In the east, by the way, those lighter grays, I believe those were air quality alerts, if I was not mistaken, which is possible because I do make mistakes sometimes. Let's take a look. No, those were dense fog advisories. We got a dense fog advisory. My mistake. There you go. Dense fog advisory in for Long Island Sound and for the coastal waters. And let's go further south. And we've got dense fog advisories up and down the New Jersey coast and into Delaware Bay. So you can thank the east wind for that and the warmer air that's trying to come in from the west and not having a whole lot of success. Because of the onshore flow. But there you have it, folks. Now let's see if that snowfall forecast map has updated itself. Nope. There's a little bit of a problem here going on with the digital map. Sometimes when they don't update, let's try it this way. Let's see if we go to WPC. We can take a look at it from their perspective. And we'll do the 72-hour probability for at least 2. And here you go. So this is for the next, obviously this is a bit front-end loaded with what's going on today, but you can see where the high probabilities for at least 2 inches are in the areas where the winter storm warnings are in effect. Switch this over. I'll just go to the probability of at least 8, and actually showing a fairly, not too shabby area size-wise in western Wisconsin and on up into northeastern Minnesota, where the probability of at least 8 inches is greater than 50%. Let's look out west, and it's pretty much the usual suspect places, the Cascades, a little bit into the Sierra Nevadas, but we're not seeing any kind of outrageously big amounts there. And here's the probability of at least 2, which covers much of the Northwest, the northwestern part of the Rockies, and in the Pacific Northwest. And again, a little bit of an extension there down into the northern part of the Sierra Nevadas. One more check of this. Nope, that map ain't working. So we'll put an end to that suffering and bring me back onto the screen. So that kind of covers it on this Sunday morning. Not having if Joe were here, we would certainly be able to carry the show through another 15 minutes or so. Oh, Tom Contino's on the board. I'm glad because Tom, I haven't seen you on the board in the last couple of weeks, and I was thinking about you yesterday, and then just before the show started, says, "Where's Tom Contino, Vin?" I said, "I bet you he's probably just, since we don't have any winter weather to talk about, he's taking There are a number of folks that love to be here during the wintertime, but then they go on hiatus in the spring and then maybe come back for hurricane season. So I'm glad to see you're on board. I guess you just took a little bit of time away from the show. New Brunswick, Canada guy, I think you're new to the chat board. Welcome. I will not get overheated raking the yard the next couple of weeks. You will not definitely get overheated, sir. The pattern doesn't lift. If the troughing read comes back into the east the way it's shaping up, it's going to be on the coolish side for you in eastern Canada. Let's see. Just kind of running through everybody's comments here. I just hope everything's going okay and has gone okay for you this coming week, this weekend. And Birder Lady is on. Nice to see you on board too. And see Joe Z here, and of course Chuck Cardillo and David Schwartz, and the rest of all the regulars on the chat boards. Very nice to see on this Sunday morning. So anyway, we're coming up on 11:30, and I don't really have a whole lot more to talk about. So I think we'll just wrap the show up, and then I can go take my poor dog on Sundays because of having the show at 11 o'clock. Unless I wake up early enough, I I don't take the dog at my usual to the dog park at the usual time, which is roughly around 8:30, 9 a.m. So he has been very patient. He's taking a nap. Yeah, that's the other thing. He knows when I'm doing the show, because he'll come in here with me in my office/bedroom, and then he'll just lay down and just sleep while the show is on. You know, if he were a critic, this show would be in serious trouble. Anyway, all right, folks, have a great rest of your Sunday. And Joe will be back tomorrow, so we'll be back on at our usual time, which is 7:35 p.m. Eastern. Have a great, great, great day.